El Chapo Guzmán, the infamous drug lord who escaped from Mexican prisons twice, is now serving life in one of America's most secure prisons, ADX Florencerest. But what's life like for him behind bars? In this video, we'll reveal how the man once known as the world's most wanted criminal is living out his sentence in a tiny, isolated cell. Stay tuned to find out how El Chapo is treated in prison. "Who is El Chapo?" he once said. "These are the most inhumane conditions I've ever experienced. I suffer from headaches every day. I haven't seen the sun or breathed fresh air since I set foot in this country. I'm tortured 24 hours every day." These words were part of a letter El Chapo wrote to a judge, recounting his harrowing experiences in one of the United States' toughest prisons. It's clear he's not enjoying his time behind bars. But the real intrigue lies in the secretive administrative measures he is forced to follow. Measures the media often avoid talking about. But before we delve into the details of these measures and El Chapo's doomed fate to die behind bars, let's first understand why he's enduring this torture in a foreign land. The name Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán hardly needs an introduction. Back in the 90s, he was one of the greatest drug lords of all time, second only to Pablo Escobar. These two infamous drug lords dominated the narcotics trade in different eras. Escobar was a charismatic kingpin who didn't shy away from the media, while El Chapo was more cunning, operating in the shadows, in Mexico. His cartel empire raked in $3 billion annually. He co-founded the infamous Sinaloa Cartel, which became a dominant force in the drug trade. After the death of DEA agent Enrique Camarena Salazar, El Chapo used the chaos to rise through the ranks of the cartel. This led to Felix Gallardo, the leader of the cartel, appointing El Chapo and Ismael El Mayo Zambada as the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel. El Chapo pulled off two of the most unbelievable prison escapes ever. His first escape in 2001 was like something straight out of a movie. Despite being in a high-security prison with tough walls and more guards than inmates, El Chapo managed to break free. He got help from prison workers, including a guard named Francisco Elito Cambas Riva, and his wife, Emma Coronel, who helped plan it. When the time came, Elito opened El Chapo's cell door and hid him in a laundry cart filled with dirty clothes. The cart was pushed through several security checkpoints, but there was a close call when it started rolling back. El Chapo was scared he'd get caught, but luckily, the cart stopped, and he made it out of the prison. Despite being a wanted man in the US, El Chapo was able to evade extradition for a time. However, on February 22, 2014, Mexican authorities captured him at a beachfront hotel in Mazatlan following an operation led by the Mexican Navy, with intelligence from the DEA and the U.S. Marshals Service. At 3:45 a.m., over 65 Marines from the Mexican Navy stormed the hotel, capturing El Chapo, who was found in bed with his wife. He was charged with drug trafficking and sent to the Federal Social Readaptation Center No. 1. But even behind bars, El Chapo showed his ability to escape. On July 11, 2015, from a high-security prison, El Chapo orchestrated a second escape that mocked the Mexican government, while being observed on security cameras in the shower area of his cell. El Chapo disappeared. Guards didn't see him for 25 minutes, and when they checked, he was gone. The escape route? A tunnel that led from the shower area to a construction site about a mile away. The tunnel was 33 feet deep and equipped with artificial lighting, air ducts, and high-quality materials. Authorities even found a motorcycle, which they believe was used to transport materials, and possibly El Chapo himself. This escape made it clear that El Chapo had unparalleled access to resources and manpower, allowing him to carry out such feats, despite all the help he had from the outside. These events revealed Mexico's inability to hold him, which ultimately paved the way for the U.S. to take charge. The arrest. On January 8, 2016, El Chapo's house was raided by Marines and police after locals noticed armed people coming and going, just before they could break in. El Chapo escaped through a tunnel, popping up 1.5 kilometers away. He then stole a car at gunpoint. But it was later found 20 kilometers south of Los Mochis. When the police caught him, El Chapo tried to bribe them, but it was too late. He was arrested and sent to the U.S. facing charges in several cities. The U.S. promised not to give him the death penalty, which helped with the extradition. On January 19, 2017, he was handed over to the DEA. When he arrived in the U.S., you could see he was terrified, knowing his time was up. In 2019, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years, to be served at ADX Florence, where he'll spend almost all his time in solitary confinement. The ADX Florence. ADX Florence is home to some of the most dangerous criminals around. These aren't people looking for money or power. They just want to hurt others. So, why was El Chapo sent to this super secure prison? The answer goes back to the prison's history. Back in 1983, two members of the Aryan Brotherhood, Thomas Silverstein and Clayton Fountain, killed two correctional officers in another prison. This showed the need for an even more secure place for the worst criminals. And that's how ADX Florence was created, located in Florence, Colorado. ADX is a high-security facility that can hold 460 inmates, but as of November 2023, only 332 people are locked up there. Most of them are kept in their cells for 23 hours a day. When they get an hour of free time, they're shackled and handcuffed. For El Chapo, that's always the case. During this time, they can walk around or exercise in a tiny underground pit. Meals are delivered to prisoners, and they're carefully checked to make sure they can't be used to harm anyone. El Chapo's cell is made of concrete, with a bed, desk, and toilet. He also has a small TV, but only educational or religious shows are allowed. His cell has a small 4x4 windows, so he can't tell where he is, making it nearly impossible to plan an escape. The prison has top-level security, motion detectors, cameras, 1,400 steel doors, razor wire, and guards everywhere. There are even gun towers around the whole place. Escaping from here seems impossible. There are different levels of security at ADX. El Chapo is in one of the most secure areas, where he's constantly watched. His lawyers claim he's never allowed to sleep and gets harassed by the guards. But even though he's a big-name criminal, he's not the most dangerous person in the prison. That title goes to people like Ramzi Youssef, who was involved in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and Thomas Silverstein, who helped design the prison. While it seems impossible for El Chapo to escape ADX Florence, there might still be a tiny chance he could find a way out. The loophole. In January 2022, a U.S. court confirmed El Chapo's conviction after his lawyers claimed jurors saw information that wasn't part of the trial. They argued that jurors heard about allegations that El Chapo drugged and raped girls. The court rejected this claim and kept his conviction in place. Now, his defense team is trying a new plan. If El Chapo behaves well, he might be moved to a less strict prison. If that happens, he could get a chance to escape again. Another way El Chapo might get out of ADX is by exploiting mental health concerns. Despite the strict security measures, there have been several murders within ADX caused by mental breakdowns. If El Chapo's legal team can make a case for his mental health deteriorating, they could argue for a transfer or even a reduction in his sentence. Murders. On April 21, 2005, two inmates, Sylvester Rivera and Richard Santiago, were caught on tape brutally beating and stabbing a well-known Mexican mafioso, Manuel Torres, to death inside ADX Florence. It's shocking to think that even in such a high-security prison, murder can still happen. You'd expect them to be sentenced to death and placed on death row. But for some reason, Rivera and Santiago stayed at ADX. Besides this incident, there have been 8 suicides in the prison, showing just how harsh the conditions are. Sure, These inmates are criminals, but they're still people, and the tough environment takes a serious toll. Not all inmates in ADX are as dangerous as El Chapo or Ramzi Youssef, but they still have to deal with the brutal conditions there. The Cartel. Back in 2012, 11 prisoners filed a lawsuit against the Federal Bureau of Prisons, claiming they were abused and not properly treated for mental illnesses. Then, in 2020, a British judge blocked the US from extraditing Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, because he could face harsh solitary confinement at ADX Florence. Later, the US made an agreement to send him, but only under the condition that he wouldn't face those special measures. For El Chapo, getting moved to a lower security prison for good behavior is a long shot, but it's his best hope. Meanwhile, even though he's behind bars, the Sinaloa cartel is still very much in business. It's now split between El Mayo and El Chapo's sons, who continue running the drug trade, extortion, and money laundering. They still control how drugs get into the US. At the same time, a new cartel, the CJNG led by El Mencho, is quickly gaining power. They've spread across the world and are fighting Sinaloa for control. While El Chapo's seen as a kind of folk hero in some places, El Mencho's the bad guy. But this shift could help El Chapo's defense team draw attention away from him. Right now, El Chapo's stuck in solitary, writing letters to his family. Mexico's president has said he might consider letting him finish his sentence there, but the US is unlikely to agree. El Chapo's story isn't over, but it looks like he's staying locked up. What do you think about El Chapo's life in prison? Do you think he'll ever escape again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this.